Hello, everybody. Well, Pop's here, and we are going to continue story time today. And we are going to go on with chapter 4. We are certainly getting up there, huh? Anyway, for those of you who are just tuning in, this is a story that I am writing in my time off stream. I happen to enjoy writing very much. Please note that what you're about to hear is a very rough draft of the story, so there may be some parts that are a little rough that will need to be worked on. If you've missed chapter 1, 2, and 3, they are available on this YouTube channel. You simply need to seek them out and you will be able to find the videos. And for those of you who would like to make a comment, they are greatly appreciated, good or bad. Constructive criticism is always welcomed, as long as it is done with tact. So anyway, let's go on here with chapter 4 of the story. Obeying the orders of Rojan, the 4 orcs did not return the old man to his cell beneath the keep, leading him instead back through the gate and outside the main entrance to the keep, where a team of 6 horses attached to a wagon stood waiting. The old man was hauled into the back of the wagon, accompanied by his guards. A rusty chain bolted to the floor of the wagon was fastened to his shackles. Having secured their prisoner, the orcs occupied the 2 benches on either side of the wagon, the old man being forced to sit between them on the wooden floor. With a word from one of the orcs, the driver of the wagon raised his whip into the air, and with a swift forward motion, the whip sailed forward towards the team of horses, ending its flight slightly above them with a loud crack. Responding as trained, the team of horses leapt forward, dragging the wagon and its occupants behind them. The ride down the drive of the keep was not a gentle one, and the old man found himself being bounced in all directions as they progressed over the rough terrain. Reaching the end of the drive, the wagon turned left onto the road offering a somewhat more stable ride for the old man and the orcs. Sliding his body along the floor of the wagon, the old man rearranged himself, his back now resting against the rough wooden front wall of the wagon. The afternoon passed uneventfully, the orcs conversing amongst themselves while the old man sat quietly contemplating his situation. Time was now his enemy. With each passing minute, the distance between himself and those he sought to liberate was increasing. More miles passed. Daylight began to fade. He would need to act soon. He needed a new plan, and he needed it now. Without warning, the old man found himself being tossed into the air, the wagon having dipped into a rut on the road. Landing hard on the wooden floor, the old man looked up and to his right. Silhouetted against the darkening horizon of the dusk-lit sky stood an abandoned farmhouse. Whether it was the jolt of the wagon or the sight of the empty farmhouse, the old man could not say, but right then and there, the plan he desperately sought took form inside his mind. The first part of the plan was to allow for some distance to be acquired between the wagon and the farmhouse. 2 hours would be more than enough. 2 hours for him to work out all the details of his plan. Interrupting his thoughts, the old man stole a glance at his captors. 2 of the 4 orcs were asleep. A third was struggling to remain awake as he fought the hypnotic rhythmic rocking motion of the wagon as it slowly consumed the miles. The 4th orc, the one closest to him, showed no fatigue. Averting his gaze back to the floor of the wagon so as not to call attention to himself, the old man closed his eyes. A little rest would serve him well in the upcoming hours. Zurich was pleased with the progress of the march this day. Having freed the little human from the bonds of his companions, the war party had been able to travel through the woods at an accelerated pace. "We stop here for the night," Zurich announced. That no further orders had to be issued was a testament to the discipline of the war party. 2 orcs set off to find wood for a fire, while 2 more orcs set off into the forest in the hopes of providing something other than stale bread and moldy cheese for their evening meal. A few of the mages searched the immediate area, pulling herbs and stuffing them in the pouches that hung about their waist, while the remaining mages settled themselves as comfortably as possible on the ground, spellbooks in hand. David, Jack, Derek, and Angie, under the scrutiny of their guards, arranged themselves in a semicircle on the soft floor of the forest. Keegan was lifted from the back of the orc. Sitting alongside the others, he said nothing, as his restraints were again placed on his legs and hands, and the rope that bound them all together was thrown over his neck. Sitting himself on a stump, Zurak observed the action of the war party as camp was established. That the human mages did very little to be of assistance did not bother or upset him. Humans were generally lazy and weak. They could not help it, it was just their nature. Orcs, on the other hand, were strong and disciplined. They did not complain or whine no matter how much work was assigned to them. They took pride in their work. They did not seek recognition or approval from others. Orcs considered all to be equal, each serving a purpose that benefited the entire race, not the individual. Within half an hour, the camp was set up. A large fire blazed in the center of the camp. A supply of wood piled high, a safe but short distance from the fire. Most of the orcs now sat around the fire, eating from packs, sharpening axes, and trading stories from past battles. The mages did not join the orcs. They circled themselves around a smaller fire which needed no wood to burn. Under the watchful eye of 2 orc sentries, the prisoners, having finished a meager meal of stale bread, dried fruit, and moldy cheese, stretched out as best they could, seeking freedom from their constraints and worries in the world of dreams. An hour passed. The mage fire was extinguished, the last of the mages having succumbed to sleep. In the center of the camp, the bonfire dwindled, the flames no longer burning brightly. Another hour the camp was silent. With the exception of the 2 orcs on sentry duty, the war party now slept. A half-day's march from the war party, under the watchful eye of Roshan, the keep prepared for the return of the war party and its prisoners. 5 cells in the basement were swept clean. Fresh straw mats were tossed in the cells. Shackles and restraining chains were cleaned and tested for any weakness. Orc hunting parties were sent out. Meat would be needed for the feast. The large banquet hall was put in order. Long tables were retrieved from the debris and repaired. Those that could not be repaired were brought to the kitchen to fuel the cooking fires. Chairs were salvaged from all through the keep, and within a few hours the banquet hall was ready to receive its guests of honor. Barrels of wine were hauled up from the basement. Fruit was harvested from the surrounding trees. Wheels of cheese, some moldy, some not, were stacked up in the kitchen. The scent of freshly baked breads, spiced meats, and sweet wine drifted throughout the keep, lifting the spirits of all within the keep, and it was rumored that at times singing echoed in the narrow corridors. Roshan himself was in a celebratory mood. The prophecy was no longer, it had failed, and he himself had been the instrument of its destruction. The final part of his plan would be complete on the morrow. The prophesied 5 would be residents of his dungeon, unable to fulfill their role in the prophecy. Tomorrow he would celebrate this victory with those who served him, bestowing honor and praise to the members of his war party. This would be followed by his return journey to the Norandic mountain fortress, from which he would set into motion his plan for revenge and control of the citizens of Erlan. Smiling and humming himself, a light skip in his step, Roshan strode off to his quarters. He still had to attend to his magical practices. There were always spells to learn, magical items that needed investigation, and the creation of new spells. It would be at least 2 more hours before he would be able to retire for the night. The old man opened his eyes slowly. 3 of his orc guards were asleep. the fourth not having surrendered to slumber. His gaze focused on the starlit night sky, paid him no attention. His gaze focused on the starlit night sky, which paid him no attention. Restraining himself from making any sudden movements that might cause his chains to rattle or draw the attention of the guard, the old man cautiously lifted his hands, sliding them inside the folds of his robes. Maintaining his gaze on the orc, the old man's fingers retrieved precious spell components from within the hidden pouches. The last spell component in hand, the old man withdrew his hands from his robes. Tossing the components in his hands in the direction of the orcs, the old man spoke aloud the word that would complete the spell. Parlata, he spoke the word forcefully. Seconds later, all 4 orcs lay in a magically enhanced deep slumber. For a moment, the old man did not move. Hearing nothing, sensing no change in the pace of the wagon, he exhaled a sigh of relief. He had been fearful that somehow the driver might have been alerted. A moment longer he waited before crawling over to the orc nearest him. Urgently, he rifled through the orc's pack, his fingers searching the contents of the pack, at last locating the large iron key to his chains and shackles. Freed from his restraints, the old man managed to get to his feet. Shuffling along on unsteady footing, the old man moved toward the front of the wagon. Somehow he had to convince the driver to stop the wagon. As he shortened the distance between himself and the driver, the old man noticed that there was something very odd about the driver. Human. The driver was not orc, but a human. Up until this point, the only humans the old man had seen were mages, all of which displayed the insignia of Rohan. Spell at the ready, the old man closed the short distance between himself and the driver. Standing directly behind the driver, the old man noticed that the driver did not display the insignia of Rohan, and except for the whip in his right hand, he carried no weapons, nor were there any weapons in sight. Odd, thought the old man. The driver never once diverted his attention from the team of horses to acknowledge his approach. Further inspection revealed an iron collar, from which a chain descended, was clasped about the driver's neck. "My good sir," the old man addressed the driver, "if you would be kind enough to stop the wagon, I would be most grateful. I assure you there is nothing to fear. The orcs are under a spell that will keep them sleeping for a few more hours at least, and it is quite possible I may have the key to remove the collar from your neck as well as any other restraints the orcs have placed on you." "And then what?" asked the driver. "I have nowhere to go, and as soon as Rojan learns that I assisted you in your escape, I will most certainly be hunted down and slaughtered mercilessly for my actions against him. However," he continued, "should I happen to be overpowered, defenseless as I am with my restraints, and no one to prohibit you from escaping, well, that would be another matter entirely." He winked at the old man as he pulled on the reins, bringing the wagon to a halt. Under a moonlit sky, the old man spent the next 30 minutes removing the leather harnesses that held the team of horses together. 4 of the horses he picketed in the lush grass that ran alongside the road. He had considered setting the horses free. However, once free, they would most likely return to the keep, alerting Rojan of his escape. The 5th he tethered to the wagon next to the driver. Using what was left of the leather straps and such, he bound the hands and feet of the 4 orcs in the back of the wagon as best he could. He had no illusions that the hastily placed bonds would keep the orcs bound for long. Sitting astride the last horse, the old man trotted up to the driver. Reaching inside the folds of his robes, he brought forth the large iron key. "In the event you change your mind," he said, placing the key in the driver's hands. "Thank you. You are most kind," replied the driver, accepting the key from the old man. "But I assure you I will not change my mind. Even if I was to escape, the cost of the lives of my family and those of my village enslaved by Rojan would be forfeit, and that is a burden I could not bear." "Understandably so," the old man replied. "Perhaps in the future our paths may cross again. Tell me, From which village do you hail? Brosnir is my home, the driver answered. It is a small village about 2 days north of here. Have you heard of it? No, but I am curious as to why Rosian holds your people in slavery and for what purpose. My people are forced to forge weapons and armor for Rosian. Those who do not work the forges are forced to work in the mine, just east of the village, gathering the raw materials needed. Women, children, and old men are loaded into wagons each morning and driven to the mine where they work until darkness. The masters in the mine are cruel, merciless orcs who do not hesitate to use the whip on any that fail to meet their quota for the day. How many orcs has Rosian stationed inside your village? Asked the old man. At first there were many orcs, at least 50. However, after 3 of the villagers escaped and were recaptured, Rosian had them and their families executed in front of the rest of the village. The heads of the escaped men were placed in the center of the village on wooden spikes as a warning to others who might seek to escape. There have been no attempts since then. After that, at least half the orcs were recalled from the village. The last time I was in my village was a few weeks ago. My best guess is that there were 15 to 20 orcs remaining. One last question before I must be off. In what way do you serve Rosian? I haul weapons and armor produced by our village to his fortress further north in the Norandic Mountains, or at least I was until a week ago when I was summoned to the keep. I must go, the old man said. I wish we had more time, but if I am able to help those I came to help, I need to leave now. Thank you for answering my questions, and if I am ever in a position to help you or your village, you have my promise that I will. Grasping a handful of mane hair, the old man kicked his heels ever so slightly into the ribs of the horse and headed off back down the road in the direction of the keep. It was a feeling of exhilaration, the sound of the wind whipping past his ear, the chill of the night air as it caressed the exposed skin on his face and hands, the smell of the vegetation and the sound of the insects as they scurried about their nocturnal duties. It was freedom, and the old man relished every moment of it. All righty, there you go. There is chapter 3. All done, all complete. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, as I said, feel free to leave some comments, good or bad. Constructive criticism, much appreciated. Just don't be rude. Anyway, folks, I hope you enjoyed this recording of Storytime. And Chapter 5 should probably be coming out in the next week or so as we continue to work on this story. And I hope you look forward to hearing more. Thank you.